Now, unless you have been living under Patrick Starr's rock, you have probably noticed that there has been a not so subtle agenda to tear apart families. As a matter of fact, I believe that one of the core tenets of the far left woke movement, i.e., the communistic, Marxist, social media socialist movement, has been to tear apart families. As simple as that. And you may ask yourself, why? Why would they want to tear families? Why would they care about the family unit? Because a family is what creates a society. It all starts in the household. So when you have two parents who come together, make that baby, now you have a family. And that family is going to be the basis of your society. And so if you're able to infiltrate and to tear that aspect apart, you tear apart the society. This has been very evident within the quote unquote Black American community where 1964, 1965, Lyndon Baines Johnson introduces quote unquote social reform, right? The very same political party that once pushed for the keeping of slavery, as well as the push for the institutionalizing of Jim Crow, are the same ones who said, you know what, we would like your vote. We don't like you. We never have. We see you as lesser than us. We would rather have you slaves or, second best is to have you separate. But since you are now forced to be in our midst due to these Republicans that have been pushing for equal rights, let's get your vote. And so how did they do that? Well, simple. They created incentive programs such as welfare, food stamps, and all the sorts, different education programs, etc., within the quote unquote urban and inner city communities. And they use these as incentives to have men get out of the house and to have mama rely on Big Daddy government because Big Daddy government had a bigger check than daddy did. And so it became simpler and simpler. It became an easier and easier choice. When that man was pissing you off a little bit, do I need you for real? I don't know. Government's taking care of things. So that being said, I found a video by a creator by the name of Nick Freitas. And I know his face. I'm pretty sure I've seen something of his, but again, he looks like the type of face of somebody who's going to tell you something exactly how it is. So I'm going to link the actual video below. But the video is titled How Government Gets Paid to Break Families Up. And there's always a financial and power incentive when it comes to these governments, right? It's like homelessness. I lived in California, or live in California, have lived here for almost 18 years now. And the Bay Area has just become a complete cesspool in many of those spaces, the San Franciscos and Oaklands, et cetera. And you think to yourself, wow, for such a wealthy state, why would the politicians not be pushing for the eradication of homelessness, only to realize, oh, homelessness is a business here. There's an infrastructure. There are people who are on, lifetime pensions and such who are working in the homeless industrial complex. So anyway, that being said, let's get into this video. I'm going to give my 2, 3, and 4 cents, and we're going to really get into the nitties of the gritty. So again, I'm going to be interacting and engaging, just giving my 2 cents. If you want to watch it by itself, click on the link below. Get yourself some water. Enjoy the show.
There's a federal law called Title 4D. It was passed in the late 1970s. This is the cause of the divorce explosion in the 1980s and the creation of, there were no family courts in the early 1980s. They didn't exist. They were created specifically because of Title 4D. Title 4D provides for matching funds for the collection of child support. So I don't know about Virginia, but I know about Texas. In Texas, it's $500 million. It's $480 to $520 million per year. The more child support that's issued, the more money the state gets in reimbursements. The more it collects, the more it gets in reimbursements. The entire Texas Attorney General's office is funded by the child support collection matching funds from Title 4D. Texas actually has a law in the Texas Government Code which requires all judges to rule in cases in such a way to maximize Title 4D reimbursements.
Wow.
Before anything is heard in case.
I was not expecting it to be this direct. I'll be honest with you, I had no idea what to expect. I just saw the title. Saw the look on that man's face, saw a beard, and I said, okay, let's get into it. Let's see what's going on. And sure enough, here we are. Am I surprised? Absolutely not. Are you surprised? Most likely not. Government using its power as a means to collect checks for doing absolutely nothing. Not an original script on that one.
This explains a lot of peculiar things in family court. Family court's known for giving custody to the dysfunctional parent, and they just do it consistently. They do it all the time. I watched a case ahead of mine one time, and they gave 2 children back to a heroin addict mother who had successfully passed the drug test after 15 days for the first time.
Oh my.
Burnout. We all experience it at some point. It's so important to me that I've actually been working on it in.
Gosh.
Okay.
What was the
Why
alternative?
would they do that? That makes no sense, right? Everybody goes, nobody in their right mind would do things like, why do they do it? Here's why they do it. The state knows full well it will never collect child support from a heroin addict.
Oh.
And all that matching money, they don't get it.
Got it.
They know that the responsible parent will bankrupt themselves to protect their child and to take care of their child, and they'll get all the matching money for that. So the decision in family court doesn't come down to
Light bulb moment. Okay, I mean we all know the discrepancy between fathers and mothers getting the children. It's oftentimes leading towards a mother, and for some, it's in good reason, right? I'm not going to have this full blanket statement to say the whole thing is unfair. However, when you put this into context, in probably more households than not, you have the father who might have been the one who's providing, especially in a marriage, right? We're talking about marriage here. Within a context of a marriage, traditionally, more often than not, you will have the man. So, wow, that adds a completely different angle into this situation. My God.
take care of their child, and they'll get all the matching money for that. So the decision in family court doesn't come down to, are you a fit and willing parent? If that were the case, then in 99% of the cases, you would have both parents getting 50-50 custody because both parents are fit and willing, right? Most abuse is actually much rarer than we think, right?
Yeah.
So abuse and neglect, those are 2 ends of the spectrum, right? So what they do is they say, which person here will give me the maximum Title IV reimbursement for the state?
Wow.
And that's the person who loses custody so that they pay child support. That's the real calculation that's going on. You mentioned CPS, and if you're looking at laws around this, you need to know about Title IV-E. Title IV-E gives reimbursements for taking children.
Huh.
So when the state takes a child from a family, they get a Title IV-E reimbursement just like Title IV-D. Here's how it works in Texas. You'll get a satellite office in a rural county of Texas that's running low on budget. They'll look for a child to low IQ parents under 18 months of age, but they'll go as high as 2 with no medical problems. And they'll go and take their children. They usually do it through subterfuge. They do a well check and they bring along an extra party that they don't tell the parents are a psychologist. Mm-hmm. The psychologist, unbeknownst to them, is doing a psych eval and recommends taking the children. They take the children. Within 6 months, the child is adopted out, and that satellite office gets $250,000 in budget money. So there's financial incentives to take children. There's financial incentives to take fathers out of the home. So as a legislature, you have to ask yourself,
family, my flabbers are beyond gasted at this point. Oh my God. This is why it matters that we continue to educate ourselves and to speak out and to continue to speak out, to never shut up, never be a silent majority, because when we don't, we allow evil to persist, right? As simple as that. When we don't educate ourselves and then put that to use in the many ways that we may be gifted within our own lives, whether it is communicating it or doing something infrastructure-wise or, whatever it is, we have to be involved. This is incredible, y'all. This is incredible. My God. Wow, wow, wow. Imagine that. Imagine that. And they're so afraid of Donald Trump stepping in and messing things up. I wonder why they're so afraid of somebody who's an outsider coming in to mess up their little game.
Incentives to take fathers out of the home. So as a legislature, you have to ask yourself, how do you change the incentives in the bureaucracy? Well, I will submit to you that this is, if you look at the total money in all the states, this is as large as some of the largest defense programs.
Yeah.
And we've never successfully cut a large defense program. That's never happened.
And I can tell you right now, the political palatability of the only way this is going to be discussed, there will be no level-headed discussion like we're seeing taking place, right? It will be this idea that you just don't want women to be able to leave abusive situations, or you don't want children to be able to get the proper child support they need. Like, you just don't want that. You're the deadbeat dad supporter. And the problem is, this is always the problem with government trying to fulfill certain functions within society for which it was never truly designed to do. And it's these sort of second and third order effects that we don't get. Is that it sounds great. It really, I mean, think about this on a 50,000 foot level. It sounds great to say, well, of course, we're going to provide funding to, let's say, a smaller jurisdiction, a poorer jurisdiction that doesn't have the resources to be able to intervene and to be able to get a kid out of a dangerous situation, or ensure that children are financially supported by a parent that should be paying child support. It makes perfect sense if you're assuming that this is always going to be operated the way it was intended and only for the purposes that it was intended. Because what you've actually done, and we see this with other welfare programs, what you've actually done is incentivize the state to now engage in certain activities. And we've seen this with COVID spending. We've seen it with welfare spending. We've seen it with everything else. You're not just getting the reasonable use case scenario. You're creating a perverse incentive.
That's right.
Okay, so
if you ever want to know why young men are not marrying, I speak to young men all the time. I get invited to speak to masculinity conferences and so forth. This is what they tell me. They go to church and they get cajoled to get married. They're told that it's their duty, it's their God-given duty. The problem is they have actually witnessed their father's lives become totally destroyed. I talk to lots of young men. They're like, my father lived out of a car for 6 months. Yeah. Because the court look, I don't think, people understand the impact of child support. So in Texas, if you have 2 kids, they're going to take 30% of your gross pre-tax income. Okay. Most businesses could never survive confiscation of 30% of their pre-tax revenues. They would just go out of business. Yeah. I've done the numbers. If in Dallas County, based on cost of living, if you make less than $45,000 a year, you cannot rent a home. You're left with about $800 a month to live on. So it doesn't work. Second thing is, you don't get to deduct that money as childcare expenses. Like, that's one area where you could make it back up, as if you had a deduction or a credit. Actually, the mother that you pay gets to deduct it as childcare expenses, not you. Okay. Yeah. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, for example, I've been for 11 years, I have had to submit all of my expenses, like every credit card expense, every cash expense.
And here's the thing, right? Because I know all of this is tied into even the feminist agenda and tearing down the patriarchy and things of that nature, which again is not this thing well, it's all this evil plot. I do believe that there are some who genuinely believe that this is like a fight about equality, etc. There are those who genuinely believe that. However, it starts to kind of unravel as something far more sinister. And even if the intentions are good, the outcomes are not, where like third wave feminism, or the version of feminism we now have, is telling women not that they must look to be equal, but instead to be better and to be superior, and that men are useless and valueless. And so imagine the kind of friction, the tension that already exists between men and women because of all this propaganda. And then once it's within the divorce courts, they are inflaming that situation because they want their outcome, which is an economic gain from it. And I believe in overall political power. When you have a population that is disoriented, that is in fear or whatever other negative low vibrational state, they are easier to control. That population is easier to control than one who is empowered and is uplifted and has personal agency and is moving through life, in a more Yeah, in a powerful way, where they have control of their mind as well as their emotions as well as their actions. And so they're imposing their own personal will as opposed to the will of the entity of government or whatever other kind of system is above everybody else. This is why, again, Donald Trump is a representation of a greater ideal or a greater idea in and of itself. He represents freedom in essence. It's not about him, the man, but it's about what he means in the context of what this political cesspool has become, which is connected to education, it's connected to business, it's connected to or industry, it's connected to religion, and they're all kind of this cesspool. And they've been playing the game for so long. Just kind of, it's almost like when you're playing a game of shells, they've just been moving shells, moving shells, moving shells. Right? And now it's like the shells are getting exposed and you're seeing what's really under there. And they're terrified of that. It's bigger than one individual, and we're seeing this thing unravel. As a matter of fact, I just got the news that Kash Patel, who has been one of these guys who've been essentially tearing the FBI a new one. He worked within the FBI for a very long time. He's now gotten the nomination for FBI director, and they are going to come for him. Best believe they're going to be coming for that man because he's said too much already. He's been outing them. He's been whistleblowing, exposing what's really been going on within the deep state. And now that he's gotten that nomination, they're going to look to tear it apart just like every single other pick. But again, this is what comes with fighting a machine and such, fighting the demons that occupy these spaces, who are willing to use everything as a means to get that control and to get those finances, which really edify their own level of control.
Expense is scrutinized by an attorney, by an accountant, and by the judge in court because they want to see if they can get more child support for me.
Yeah.
You permanently lose all financial privacy. I have been told by a judge I had to file a motion to try to change jobs.
Wow.
Because it paid me $10,000 a year less, but made it more geographically convenient for me. The judge said, no, you cannot change jobs.
Wow.
So you lose all of your freedoms once you get into divorce court if you're designated as the one who pays the child support.
Yeah, no, and I've seen this before too, where it's like the positive use case scenario of this is you have somebody that kind of manipulates the system or leaves a job temporarily in order to get a lower rate requirement for child support, and then immediately gets a higher job or whatever it is, right? Like there's the system can be gamed either way, but you're
Definitely.
right. It creates this perverse incentive. One, and I'll tell you this, I'm a huge marriage advocate, right? I am a ton of my content is about the importance of marriage, the necessity of marriage in society. Yeah. But you're not wrong that here's I'll put it to you the most crass way it was put to me. Nick, please explain to me why I should risk getting married so the government will pay a woman to leave me, take my kids, and I can spend the rest of my life to pay my ex-wife to sleep with another dude.
That's exactly right. And that's exactly what young men tell me.
Yeah.
So
And again, I am an advocate of marriage. I'm an advocate of positive relationship dynamics. Actually, a lot of my earlier content was geared towards relationship for that purpose. But fortunately or unfortunately, there are other things that must be addressed at the core. And one of those things is, again, this war for our minds is real, folks. It's real. Simple as that. There are those who benefit off of our weaknesses, off of our fear, off of our division and divisiveness. And, though I call things out, when I'm mentioning woke and woke ideology, it's not just a pinpoint to the person, or even if I do bring up individuals like a Van Jones or Charlemagne or Al Sharpton, is because I'm pointing to what that person is representing, holding them accountable as well as what they actually represent, which is an entire infrastructure that unfortunately leads to exactly what we're hearing here, where there's a corrupt system and it's screwing everybody in the process. The children are the biggest victim. The true victim in that situation is really the child, who doesn't have any say in any of it, never did. And yet they have to suffer the consequences of, what a corrupt system is essentially producing. And, we have power in this. I'm never going to be one of these guys like, oh, we're cooked, it's done. No, we have power in this. We have to take personal agency. We have to make better decisions within our lives. When we're choosing partners, we have to know why we're doing it and, go beyond the physical, the materialistic. We have to go beyond these aspects and say, who is this person at their core? Is this going to guarantee that there won't be divorce? I'm not saying that. But the most we can do is to make the best decisions in our lives, period. And that is personal agency. And it is also to continue to speak the truth. Don't just allow the perpetuation of these crazy, insane ideas. The woke ideology spread because it was able to bully itself in a way where we feared any sort of backlash as opposed to standing up to it. I know for me personally, that's been my experience. For too long, I said nothing. And finally, I could not say anything anymore. You know, my new thing is like, I couldn't sit back and watch the world burn. I couldn't do it. I have to tell the truth, as simple and plain as it is, even if it makes me an adversary and an enemy to people who might look just like me, which is what's happened time and time again. I'm called a coon. I'm called Uncle Tom, a Sambo, all sorts of things because I'm willing to speak to certain issues, but I'm okay with that. I'm willing to take that so long as it means the truth is getting out there. So that being said, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Until the next time, peace.
Remember, married people vote Republican. Yeah. So when young men decide not to get married, you're increasing the number of Democrat voters out there.
I used to be afraid of the dark, a place unknown like a heart in their heart. I used to see my life in the bar. Now the kids unchained, every shackle is lost. 2 steps in the moonlight, 2 step in the daytime. You just know when it feel right. You got a feeling the time's not. See you through those shades that I just threw on. Through my lenses, you just can't do no wrong. I fell in love with myself again. I fell in love with myself. I fell in love with the sunshine. I fell in love with the light. I fell in love with the full moon. I fell in love with the night. I can see the light again. I can see the light. You can see the life in him illuminate the night. I know the time is taking. A 3, 6, 5, that's a full rotation.